Yo, 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 yo! Welcome back to the channel. My name's CJ. This is Out of Bounds DFS, and in today's video, we're going to do another 12 pack of picks for you today on the NBA PrizePicks board. So, not a huge slate today, not a small slate, but I'm going to do what I did in yesterday's video, where we're going to look at 3 picks for points. We're going to look at 3 picks for assists, 3 picks for rebounds, and 3 picks for 3 points. So if you're into PrizePicks, or if you're into prop pick betting on any of the various sports betting sites, well, stick around because I think we've got some good picks for you again today. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome aboard here. On Out of Bounds DFS, we talk all things single player daily fantasy sports, mainly focused on PrizePicks and NBA right now, but you know, we're always mixing it up, doing different things. So if this is something that you're into, definitely hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, give this video a thumbs up. A like lets me know that you guys are picking up what I'm putting down, and I appreciate all your continued support. The growth has been tremendous, and it's all because of you, and I make content for you folks out there. So thank you so very much. Now, without further ado, let's start getting into this. Now, I'm going to try and do things a little more streamlined today instead of bouncing around from prop category to prop category. A lot of these guys that I'm going to talk about today happen to fall into the same team. So we'll have like Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons, Seth Curry in multiple categories, Zion Williamson, and Steven Adams. So I'm going to try and group them together more by their team, the team that they play for. And we'll kind of try and make things a little more seamless there. So let's go ahead and do it. And we'll start with points, where we've got Seth Curry at 12.5. 12.5. Now, the way that I'm initially feeling is that he could go over 12.5 points. But, of course, we don't just stop right there. We look further into this game and see if, you know, he's been performing well on that 12.5 points. And if over does make sense, or if it doesn't, then maybe I'll take the under or just tell you to fade it all together. So my initial hunch, though, is Seth Curry 12.5 over. So let's see if that makes any sense at all, or if I'm just crazy. Now, if we move down to this game here, you could see that this one is a late game. We got the Philadelphia 76ers taking on the Los Angeles Clippers. This one tips off at 10 p.m. In case you were wondering, I'm over on fantasylabs.com/NBA/Vegas, and that's how I got this board up right here. You can see that this game opened at 108.25 for Philly, 112.75 for LA, and it has not moved since the implied opening total. So it's still the same total, and the spread is also still the same at 4.5 points. So this game does look like it's going to stay close, competitive. Doesn't look like we're at any risk of a blowout or anything like that. Game totals are okay. They're not super high like this Utah Jazz game. We'll get to that one in a little bit. So overall, I do think that there's some potential here for some fantasy upside and real life points, rebounds, assists, all those things too. Even 3-pointers. We're going to talk about those as well. So anyway, Seth Curry, 12.5 points. Let's get into it and see how Seth Curry has been performing here recently. We'll go and head on over to lineups.com. Now, lineups.com is a nifty little website because they give you season averages, 30-game averages, 10-game averages for you to look at for most major statistical categories, including the one that we are interested right here, right now, which is points. So for the season, you can see that Seth Curry is scoring 13.1 points per game, which puts him over 12.5 points. So far, so good. Now, we can also switch this over and look at his last 30 games and see how his scoring average looks. He's still at over 12.5 points with 13 points on his last 30 games. And then finally, his last 10 games, Seth Curry, 12.9. Now, it's starting to dip a little bit, but the good news is it's still more than 12.5. So my initial hunch of taking the over on Seth Curry at 12.5 still looks pretty good here. Not feeling like it's impossible by any means. So we head on over to basketball-reference.com, and I use basketball-reference.com to look at his last 5 games because I want to see how Seth has been scoring the basketball here recently. So we've now looked at season averages, 30-game averages, 10-game averages. Now we're wanting to look at 5-game averages, or at least get an idea of his 5-game game log. All right, so you can see that if we dial all the way back here to his most recent game, he does have some inactive games in his game log. So we'll start with his most recent, which was against the Lakers on March 25th, 2 days ago. He plays 27 minutes, ends up dropping in 19 points. Now, Seth Curry is very shot dependent, shot making dependent. In order for him to hit his fantasy scores or his real life totals or anything like that, the shots have to be falling for him. He's a little streaky at times, but most of the time he can get there, and you'll see that in these game logs. So he misses these 3 games. We go back a little further here, look at it at this game against Milwaukee. He plays about 26 minutes in that one, drops in 10 points. 10 points, not good enough to go over 12.5 points. So that would be an under. Then he's got 20, 21, and 14. So overall, in his last 5 games, he has went over 12.5 points in 4 out of 5 games. So I'm liking the success rate here for Seth Curry. Now, he's playing the Clippers tonight. Let's see if there's any previous game logs that we can look at and get an idea of how Seth performed against the Clippers in the past. And I'm not seeing any here, so I'm not seeing any previous matchups for Seth. So I guess we could go ahead and move on here, and we'll look at his props if there are any. Type in Curry here on rotowire.com. And you just head over to their betting page, and you could see the NBA player props there. Now, Seth Curry at 12.5 on DraftKings Sportsbook. People are taking the over there, slight over. Now, on FanDuel, their sportsbook, no action one way or the other that really gives us an edge or a clue as to how people are betting on this 12.5 point prop. And then finally, BetMGM, the third site that has a 12.5 point prop up for Seth Curry. People are taking a slight over on that 12.5. So I think everything kind of checks out here for Steph Curry. I keep calling him Steph. Seth Curry at 12.5 points. I do like the over on this prop. I think this is one that we can feel pretty confident and comfortable in. So while we're on the Philadelphia 76ers here, we're going to talk about assists. So we're going to jump over to the assist category on PrizePicks, and we'll scroll on down. Now, they've got Seth Curry up at 2 assists. Now, I also like the over on Seth Curry at 2 assists. So we can head on back here and take a look at lineups.com. We'll switch this back to the season view and get an idea of how he's been dishing the rock for his season averages. Now, at 2 assists, he is averaging 2.9 assists per game for the season. So that puts him over 2 assists, obviously. And we look at his last 30 games, you can see Seth Curry, 2.8 assists. So it drops a little bit, but still healthy enough to go over 2. And then finally, in his last 10 games, Seth Curry, 3.7 assists. So his assists take a big shot upward. Now, guys like Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid have kind of missed some time for this Philadelphia 76ers squad in these last 10 games. So, he's probably taken on a bigger workload, and that probably has a lot to do with his assist numbers going up. Now, we'll go back over here to Basketball Reference to see how he's been dishing the ball here recently. In his last game against the Lakers, 2 assists, that would be a push. 3 assists puts him over. 2 assists, another push. Over here with a 4 assist game. And finally, 3 assists in that game. So he has not went under 2 assists in any of his last 5 games. So at worst, you're looking at maybe a push situation here, but at best, it looks like going the over on Seth Curry at 2 assists makes some sense. Now, finally, we'll check out rotowire.com and dig into the assist props for Curry, if there are any out there. And as a fellow Curry, I'm liking everything about Seth Curry so far today, and that's why I'm clicking these overs on his name in some of these props. So at 2.5 assists over on DraftKings Sportsbook, people are heavily taking the under on that. Now, that would mean that he's going to go for less than 2.5 assists, which means 2 assists maybe. And that would be a push situation at worst. Now, FanDuel, people again are taking the under on 2.5 assists. BetMGM, they are taking a heavy under on 2.5 assists. So, yeah, I would say that this one is stacking up to be a potential push situation. But if I'm taking the over or under on these 2 assists for Seth Curry today, I am leaning toward the over. As you can see in his recent game logs, he has gone over in a couple of those games in his last 5, he has not went under 2 assists at any point. So taking the under here doesn't make as much sense. Take the over. Worst case scenario, you're in a push situation. So I'm liking the way that one's looking for Seth Curry. Now, while we're talking Seth Curry here, I do like one more prop for him, and that is his 3-point prop. So he is currently at 1.5 3-pointers made. For some reason in my notes here, I have him at 2, but at 1.5, I think I like that even more. So let's take a look at that real quick, and we'll see how that Seth Curry 3-point prop is looking here. So we'll go back to his season averages. We'll scroll on over, and we'll take a look at Seth Curry. He attempts 5 3-pointers per game. He makes 2.1. So at 1.5, man, that's looking quite nice so far. Now we switch it over to a 30-game average. You can see Seth Curry in his last 30 games has attempted 4.7 threes and has made 2. So that's an easy over on this 1.5. And then finally in his last 10, 5.4 threes attempted. So his attempts have gone up, still making just 2 3-pointers a game. But if we're taking the over on 1.5, well then that's good for us. That's a nice little over there. So we've got his game logs already up here on Basketball Reference. Let's take a look at how he's been shooting the ball in his last 5 games. So against LA here, he attempts 8, knocks down 4. That would be an easy over on today's 1.5. Against the Milwaukee Bucks, he attempts 8 threes, knocks down 2. That puts him over. Attempts 7 against the Knicks, knocks down 4. That puts him over. Attempts 6 here against the Spurs, knocks down 3. That puts him over. And then finally, his first under here against the Wizards, where he attempts 3 threes, only makes 1. So his 3-point attempts were down in that game. Normally, at least in his last 5 games, he is shooting 5 or more threes in most of these games here. So yeah, all signs for me are pointing to an over on Seth Curry at 1.5 3-pointers made. But just to be sure, we're going to head back over to RotoWire real quick, type in his name, and see how he's looking on the various sites here. Now, you can see on DraftKings Sportsbook, on 1.5 threes, people are taking the over, hammering it, in fact. On FanDuel, people are taking the over on 1.5 there, big time, even more than they are on DraftKings. So as you can see, guys, as soon as I upload this video, you should probably run and see if if Seth Curry is at 1.5 3-pointers made still. If he is, definitely click the over. If he's up at 2, still click the over. I still think there's a good chance and some reliable evidence here, we'll say, to taking the over even at 2 3-pointers made. So there you have it for Seth Curry in this situation. Now, while we're on the topic of Philadelphia 76ers, I got a couple of other guys, or a couple of other props, I should say, that I am interested in playing today. One being Ben Simmons at assists here. So if we go to the assist category for single stat, I got Ben Simmons here at 6.5 on the board. I'm kind of leaning toward the over. So we're going to take a look at Ben Simmons and see if the over makes any sense here. So we'll head back to lineups.com. We could switch it back to the season view. And you can see for the season, in terms of assists, well, maybe now you can see it. Ben Simmons is at 7.7, so putting him well over 6.5 for the season average. Now, if we look at his 30-game average, it drops a little bit, but still 7.6 is a healthy over on 6.5 that he's projected for today. And then finally, Ben Simmons in his last 10, 6.6, so it drops down quite a bit, but still 6.6 is enough for us to go over on 6.5 and feel okay. Now finally, we'll head on over here to basketballreference.com. We'll take a look at Ben Simmons and see how his last 5 games have fared for him. I think I mentioned he's missed a little time throughout the season in different spots, but recently he's been playing more games than not. So we can look at his minutes and see how many minutes he's been getting and look at his assists and stuff. So for his last game against the Lakers, he played 38 minutes, great minutes number there, drops 12 dimes. Now in the 2 previous games, 4 and 4, little shaky, makes you feel a little uncomfortable taking the over on 6.5 assists. Now he missed this game against Sacramento, so we're going to head back here and look at the 4th game in his game log. He drops 12 assists against the Milwaukee Bucks, great over there. And then finally against the New York Knicks, he dropped 7 assists in that one, which would be good for an over. So all in all, to wrap it up for you guys and summarize here, in his last 5 games, he has went over 6.5 assists in 3 of them and under in 2 of them. I would consider those 2 games where he dropped 4 assists to be outliers, to be ones that are obviously, out of the norm for him when you look at his averages of like 6.5 or more assists per game. So last but not least, we're going to head back over to RotoWire. We're going to type in Mr. Simmons' name here. And at the DraftKings Sportsbook at 6.5 assists, people are taking a slight under on the 6.5 assists. And over on FanDuel, they're also favoring the under on 6.5 assists. And finally, BetMGM, people favoring the under there as well, as he is a minus 139 on the under on BetMGM. So not loving this one as much as some of the ones that I looked at already for like Seth Curry, but yeah, I still think that there's a little bit of a play here in terms of taking the over. Some recency bias might be at work here with these couple of games that he's had where he's dropped just 4 assists, but you got to think that these guys in the NBA, most of the time they play up to their averages. So I'd be taking Ben Simmons here probably on an over and hoping that he's out there just dishing the ball. So there you have it for Ben Simmons. Let's see if I have any other Philadelphia 76ers props up my sleeve, and I do. I've got actually a couple here for Tobias Harris. We'll start with his rebounds real quick because they kind of caught my eye here. Now, on the PrizePicks board, he's at 7.5 boards. I am liking the over. So let's see if maybe the over is the way to go here for Tobias Harris. We'll dial things back here to the season averages, and you can see that Tobias Harris has been rebounding the ball at a higher rate than 7.5 rebounds, actually 7.6 for the season. So far, the over on rebounds looking like it's got some legs. Now, in his 30-game average, 7.6 rebounds as well, so that does put him over 7.5. Now, finally, in his last 10 games, the rebounds dropped just a tick, putting him at 7.5 rebounds, which puts him at a push situation in his last 10 games. But, we got to take things a step further. We got to go a little bit more in depth here when we're trying to lock in some of these prop picks, and we'll do that by looking at his last 5 games. Now, if you head down and look at his most recent games and you go to the column that's TRB, that stands for total rebounds. So that's your offensive and your defensive rebounds all lumped into one column for you. Makes it nice and easy. We can look at his last 5 games. He goes under against LA with just 6 boards. Comes back here against the Golden State Warriors, 13. Goes under with 4, goes over with 11, and over with 9. So in his last 5 games, the majority of those games, he has went over 7.5 rebounds. And we don't have any previous game logs or anything like that, unfortunately. So our last stop is going to be over on RotoWire, and we're going to take a look at Tobias Harris and his 7.5 rebound prop on DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, people are taking an overplay here on Tobias Harris at 7.5. If we scroll over a little bit, we could see on FanDuel, people are favoring the over on 7.5. And finally, BetMGM, they are hammering the over on 7.5 rebounds as well. One thing that I will mention for all you narrative lovers out there, this is a bit of a revenge game for Tobias Harris versus this Clippers team. Some of you will remember that he was once a part of the Los Angeles Clippers. So maybe he plays with an extra chip on that shoulder of his and looks to put up a big game tonight. But there you have it for Tobias Harris and his rebounds. The action over on the various sports books is looking like the over's the way to go. His averages look like it's either going to be an over or a push situation. So, yeah, I think I am feeling pretty confident here about Tobias Harris and my initial gut reaction of maybe taking the over on 7.5 boards. All right, we got one more Tobias Harris prop while we've got him pulled up here, and that is for his 3-point prop. So let's head back over to the 3-point made tab here on PrizePicks.com. And again, if you guys don't play on PrizePicks still, you can use all of the information I'm talking about in today's video to go out to your various sports books and place your bets there as well. A lot of this information here is applicable to the various sports betting sites, DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, PointsBet, and whoever else you like to spend your money with. You can use this information over there as well, so feel free to do that. Now, Tobias Harris at 1.0 3-pointers made tonight. I am liking the over on this prop. So let's take a look and see if I've got a point here, or maybe I should be taking the under, or it could just be a fade. I mean, yesterday's video, we had a couple of situations that felt kind of murky to me. And I was like, hey, I'm just not going to touch it because I'm not seeing a clear over or under play here. And, you know, sometimes walking away and finding a better pick elsewhere is just the way to go. But with that in mind, Tobias Harris and his 3-pointers for this season, he's attempting about 4 threes per game, making 1.6. So far, the over on this 1 3-pointer prop is looking good. Now, Tobias Harris for the 30-game averages 3.4 3-pointers attempted per game, making 1.4. So still over 1, decent. And then finally, in his last 10 games, attempting less 3-pointers, 2.7 threes attempted, making 1.1. Still puts him over, but things are looking a little tighter here. We're losing our edge, so to speak, on this over on this 1.0 3-pointer prop. So looking at his last 5 games, you can see that his 3-point attempts are down in his last 5, not attempting nearly as many threes here. In his last game, which was against the Lakers, 1 attempt, he missed on that 1 attempt. Now, 2 attempts here, making just 1, which would be good for a push. 3 attempts makes 1. That's a push. 3 attempts makes 2. That's an over. And 4 attempts makes 1. That puts him in another push situation. So to round it up for you guys, his last 5 games, he's got 3 pushes. He's got 1 over, and he's got 1 under. So it's been a little crazy here for Tobias Harris in this one. But again, I do think that he could potentially play with a chip on his shoulder and possibly hit the over on this 1 3-pointer made prop. But let's take a look and see if anybody else out there agrees with me on this one. So you can see that DraftKings Sportsbook, they've got him up at 1.5 3-pointers made. Now on that prop, people are smashing the under, smashing it, destroying it. So they think that he's going to shoot maybe and make 1 3-pointer, which would put us in a push situation here. And hard not to feel that way when you look at his recent game logs and everything. Now at FanDuel Sportsbook, they've got him at 1.5. People, again, are smashing the under on 1.5, thinking that he'll land probably on 1 3-pointer made or less. And then finally, BetMGM, they've got him at a big minus 238 on the under for 1.5 3-pointers made. So again, this is really setting up for a situation where the push looks like it's in play here. I'm probably going to take the over and just hope that he can hit 2 threes. Worst case scenario, I'm left in a push spot. Now pushes, they pay, but they don't pay as much. So keep that in mind when you lock this pick in. All right, with him out of the way, we can start talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves because I got a couple of picks for the Minnesota T-Wolves that I'm kind of feeling. And we'll start things off with points, and more specifically, Anthony Edwards points. He's at 20.5 right now over on PrizePicks. And I say right now because these projections, these props and everything, they change throughout the day. They're dynamic. They're always moving. So we've got to keep that in mind. So we'll head back over to Fantasy Labs and we'll take a look at the action and the game totals and spread and see how things are stacking up. So this game, when it opened, it was 111.75 for the Houston Rockets. It is now at 112.25 for Houston. 116.75 for the Minnesota side of things, 116.75. So no change in their totals whatsoever. Now, the spread was at 5 points. It is now at 4.5 points, meaning that this game might be more competitive than what it seems. Now, last night, it was a pretty crazy game. John Wall was just dropping dimes left and right. Kind of caught me off guard. I think we talked about taking the over on John Wall, 7 assists yesterday. Well, he ended up crushing 7 assists. I did not see that coming. I personally did not play that John Wall prop. I wish I would have because it hit. Another one that did really well was Karl Anthony Towns and over on his 25.5 points. I think he ended up going for like 27 or something like that. So that one ended up hitting as well. So we're going to talk about him in just a minute because I'm liking Karl Anthony Towns on those points once again. But first and foremost, Anthony Edwards at 20.5. So let's do our thing here. We'll go to lineups.com, click the season averages, scroll on down the line, and we'll unclick the Philadelphia 76ers, and we will click on the Minnesota T-Wolves. And for the season, you can see that Anthony Edwards, in terms of his points per game, he is at 16.8. Now, you got to remember, at one point, D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, they were in the lineup, and Anthony Edwards wasn't getting a whole lot of playing time. Things have changed here over the last 30 and 10 games, so we'll look at those as well. Now, for his last 30 games, in terms of his scoring average, you can see that Anthony Edwards is up to 19.4 points, climbing up there now. You can see the scoring average is on the rise. And then in his last 10 games, whew, boy, does it take a big jump. He is up to 25.2 points per game. So, man, that puts him way over this 20.5 points, doesn't it? I'm liking the way things are looking. I don't know about you. But we're going to head on over here to Basketball Reference real quick, and we're going to type in Anthony Edwards' name. And we'll head down the line here and take a look at his last few games and see how he's been scoring the basketball. All right. Well, 12 points against Houston last night. Not a good game. Both he and Ricky Rubio shot horrendously. At one point, I think they combined to go like 4 for 20 or something like that. And Rubio was like 0 for 8 or something. It was ridiculous. They just, neither guy was shooting the basketball worth of crap. So bad game for both of them. I expect a bounce back tonight. Anyway, that's an under. 29 points puts him well over 20. Then he goes under, and then a huge game here with 42 points against the Phoenix Suns. So in his last 5, I mean, he has not been going over 20.5 points very often here. He's got 2 big overs, and the rest are pretty big unders. So I'm not liking the way things are setting up here so far for our friend Anthony Edwards. Now, we can scroll back here and see if there's any previous matchups against this Houston Rockets team. And no, other than last night's game, I'm not seeing any others. So let's skip ahead here and we'll talk about his points props on the various websites across the industry. So we'll type in his name. And you can see at 20.5 points on DraftKings Sportsbook, not really getting any action one way or the other. I got to stop clicking on that. And then for FanDuel at 20.5, people are taking the over there. And in BetMGM at 20.5, people are taking the over there as well. So I am liking the over on Anthony Edwards. I don't think he shoots as bad as he did last night. I mean, it doesn't get much worse, to be honest with you. So I'm leaning toward the over on Anthony Edwards based on his 10-game averages, based on the fact that he's got tons of scoring punch and scoring upside, and the game totals look good. The spread looks like it's going to be another one where it's going to be close again at just 4.5 points right now. So leaning toward the over on Ant Edwards. All right, while we've got the Minnesota Timberwolves on our brain, I told you about Karl Anthony Towns last night. He was at 25.5 real life points. That was his prop. And I liked the over yesterday, and it ended up working out. So let's see if maybe we could take the over again today, because that's the way that I'm leaning on the big cat, Karl Anthony Towns. Now, in his season averages, 23.7 points. That would put him under. In his last 30 games, 19.9 points would put him well under. And then finally, in his last 10 games, Karl Anthony Towns 17.4. That doesn't quite seem right to me. So let's look into it a little bit more. Those averages are going like way down and in the wrong direction. I mentioned it in yesterday's video, guys, that I didn't think Houston had anybody who was a Karl Anthony Towns stopper. And I was right. Christian Wood just cannot contain this dude. He's too small, and Karl-Anthony Towns is too good, too talented. So let's look at his last 5 games and see how he's been scoring the basketball. Last night against Houston, he was at 25.5 points, as I mentioned. He ended up dropping in 29 actual points, putting him over. 22 against Dallas puts him under. 33 puts him over. 24 puts him under. And finally, 41 points, a huge, huge over against the Phoenix Suns. So in his last 5 games, he has went over 1, 2, 3 times and under just twice. And he's got a couple of games where he's narrowly missed hitting 25.5 or more points. So I'm liking the way Karl-Anthony Towns is playing in recent games. Now, finally, we're going to take a look at his prop here for scoring on the various sites out there, sportsbook sites. So DraftKings Sportsbook, they've got him going under 25.5 points right now. FanDuel, they've got him going under 25.5 points. And finally, BetMGM has him going under 25.5 points. I don't know why they're taking the under when last night he went over. Maybe they're thinking back-to-back, and maybe guys just don't perform quite as well in a back-to-back situation against the same opponent. But I don't know. I don't think that there's a lot that has changed in 24 hours for Karl-Anthony Towns to be taken under 25.5. But this is going to be one where I might walk away from it. I walked away from it last night. I didn't believe in Karl-Anthony Towns, and he ended up proving me wrong. But the initial hunch was going over on Karl-Anthony Towns again at 25.5. And I mean, I just, I kind of think you have to, and unless you think that there's something that's drastically changed from last night's matchup to this matchup today. But I don't think there has. So that's going to do it for Karl-Anthony Towns and the points prop. I don't think I have anybody else that we're going to be looking at from the Minnesota side of things. So now we're going to have some like little one-offs here and there. The first one that we're going to talk about is actually Zion Williamson and Steven Adams. So Zion Williamson assists is the next guy we're going to discuss real quick. So if we head on down to the assist props for the New Orleans Pelicans, you can see they got Zion Williamson at 4.5 assists right now. And my initial hunch, my initial read on this was taking the over on Zion at 4.5 assists. So with that in mind, let's go ahead, change this over to season averages. We will deselect that because I know with the New Orleans Pelicans, I'm pretty sure I have to search for these guys manually here. So for the season averages and Zion Williamson's assists, 3.5 for the season, putting him under by 1 whole assist on tonight's prop of 4.5. Now, if we look at Zion for his last 30 games, you can see that his assists go up to 4.1 assists. So things are trending in the right direction. And then finally, in the last 10 games, 3.9 assists. So he's not dishing the ball out very well here in the season averages, 30-game averages, or 10-game averages. They're all under 4.5 assists. So far, I'm not liking the way that things are shaping up here for my initial hunch or my initial read of over on Zion Williamson at 4.5 assists. But we're going to look at his last 5 games, and maybe that will tell a little bit of a different tale. So we type his name in here to basketballreference.com. We head on down to the game logs, and we look at his last 5 games in the assist category. Now, against the Denver Nuggets, he drops 5 dimes, putting him over 4.5. 5 here against the Lakers, putting him over. 1 puts him under. 3 puts him under. And then he drops 8 against Portland, putting him over. So that's his last 5-game recap for you, where he's went over 3 times, under 2 times. So more often than not, he has gone over in his last 5 games. So maybe there's a little bit of truth to me taking the over, or wanting to take the over here on Zion Williamson. Now, last but not least, we're going to check out RotoWire and see how the various sports books have Zion Williamson going tonight. At 4.5 assists, they've got him going under by quite a bit here. A lot of folks taking the under on DraftKings. On FanDuel, people are taking the over at 4.5. And on BetMGM, they're taking a strong over stance here for Zion Williamson under 4.5 assists as well. So my initial reaction was going over. Now I'm not so sure. So for me, I might just back away and not play this Zion Williamson prop. Or you could just trust in the fine folks at the various sports betting sites and ride with them, tail them on this under 4.5 assists for Zion Williamson. But I think for me, I'm going to step away from this one and not play that pick. All right, so for the next guy, I had Steven Adams at 9 rebounds. Let's see if he's still at 9 rebounds. And on that 9 rebound prop, I liked him to go over 9 rebounds in this game. So we're going to take a look at that and see if it still makes any sense here. Now he's facing off against the Dallas Mavericks. This game tips off at 9:10 p.m. I just realized we failed to look at the game totals and spread when we talked Zion Williamson. So let's look at it right now real quick. So Dallas opened at 115.25. They're not 115, so their totals have dropped just a little bit. Not a big difference there. And the same for New Orleans, 114.25 is where they opened. Their implied total now is down to 114. So a ton of points going to be scored in this game. With a spread of just 1 here. So I'm liking the way that this game is shaping up and stacking up. Should stay close, competitive, and be high scoring. So taking some overs, making a lot of sense here. Now, Steven Adams is the man with the plan that we're going to be talking about. So let's type his name in, and you can see for the season what he's been doing. There we go. So for the season, in terms of rebounds, 9 rebounds on the dot, which would put him at a push versus tonight's projection of 9 rebounds. So we switch this from season view to the last 30 games, and we type his name back in here. And for his last 30 games, his rebounds actually go up a hair, 9.1 rebounds. So if I'm liking the over, this is looking good for me. So far, I'm in a push situation with his season averages, and I'm at an over situation for his last 30 games. Now, the final thing we look at is, of course, the last 10 games. So we type his name back in here, and you can see his rebounds are actually trending upward. So his season average was at 9. His 30-game average was at 9.1, and his 10-game average is now at 9.3. So things are looking up and up here for Steven Adams and the over on rebounds. But we wouldn't be who we are if we stopped there. No. We dig a little deeper, we go a little further, and we take a look at how Steven Adams has been rebounding the ball in his last few games here, last 5 specifically. So against the Denver Nuggets, just 4 rebounds there. Played 41 minutes and came up with just 4 rebounds. Say it ain't so. Oh man, that's a disappointment. Against the Lakers here, he plays 25 minutes, scoops up 7 boards. So 2 big unders here. Now, 3 games back, he plays 36 minutes against the same Denver Nuggets team that held him to just 4 rebounds. Well, he ends up with 13 boards in that one. So much better there in that first meeting. And then against Portland, 10 boards. And then finally against Portland here, just 5 rebounds rather. So in his last 5 games, he's got 2 games where he's went over 9 rebounds. The rest of them, he has went well under 9 rebounds. So looking a little sketchy here for me. Now, finally, we're going to take a look at the various sports books. We'll type in Steven Adams' name, and you can see that DraftKings has him at 9.5. Now, at 9.5, people are taking the over right now, so they think he's going to rebound the ball much better than he has over his last 5 games. At FanDuel, they got him at 9.5, and people again are taking the over at 9.5. And finally, BetMGM over at 9.5, and PointsBet at 9.5. People are taking the over. So the over is just looking like the way to go here on Steven Smash Adams. I call him Smash. That's my nickname for him, and I think he could possibly smash 9 rebounds in a game with a high total, a close spread. And the way that the action's looking, the juice is running on Vegas, I think taking the over on Steven Adams could be the way to go. All right. Let's see if there's anybody else from this New Orleans game. I don't think so. In fact, I think we have finally reached our last 2 prop picks. And the next one, while we're on rebounds here, I'm going to mention is Saddiq Bey. Saddiq Bey is at 4.5 rebounds. I was looking at him and possibly considering taking the over on 4.5 rebounds against this Washington Wizards team. When you take the matchup into consideration, I should say, Washington, everything goes up against Washington. more points against Washington, more rebounds, more assists, and everything else. So that's why I'm liking the over on Saddiq Bey at 4.5 rebounds. So let's head over to Fantasy Labs and we'll take a look at how this game is looking here. All right, so you got Detroit. They opened at 111.25. You can see their total dropped by 1 point. Washington opened at 114.75, and they have dropped down 1 point to 113.75. So both teams' totals have dropped by a point, but the spread remains the same at 3.5 points. So there you go. Totals looking pretty healthy. Spread looking very competitive. Should not be a blowout. Saddiq Bey should get all the minutes that he can handle here. So let's head back over to lineups.com and we could take a look at some of these averages for Saddiq Bey and see if we're going to go over or under based on his averages here. Now, for the season average, you can see that his rebounds are at 4.1, which puts him under. So not looking good if I'm liking the over initially. For his last 30 games, his rebound averages dropped down to 3.8. And then finally, in his last 10, Saddiq Bey's rebounds spike way up, actually, at 4.7. Maybe things changed once Blake Griffin left the lineup. I'm not sure, but his rebounds are on the rise here, putting him over this 4.5. So we'll head back here to Basketball Reference, type in Saddiq Bey's name, and we'll scroll on down and take a look at his game logs. All right, so in his last 5 games, on 4.5 rebounds, he goes over here, and then you could see goes under, over, and then a big over here against Toronto. So in his last 5 games on 4.5 rebounds, he's got 3 overs and 2 unders. So more often than not, recent games, he has gone over 4.5 rebounds. Now I'm going to look here and see if we've got any previous matchups against this Washington Wizards team. And I am not seeing any here to reference. So yeah, we can go ahead and move on and look at RotoWire and get an idea of how the different sites have Saddiq Bey rebounding the basketball today. So DraftKings doesn't have a rebound prop up for Saddiq. So we move on over and we see that FanDuel and BetMGM both do, but they're both different. FanDuel at 4.5 has him going over, meaning they think he's going to get 5 or more rebounds. Now, BetMGM at 5.5, they're taking the under, meaning they think he's going to go for less than that. So probably 5 rebounds or less, right? So it's looking like when you compare those two sites that the number of 5 is the way to go here. So I would lean toward taking the over on the 4.5, hope for 5. Worst case scenario, he ends up going under, and that would suck because we don't get paid if we're wrong. So hopefully we're right here, but it looks like the 5 is shaping up to be the magical number that Saddiq Bey lands on, and I think that makes some sense here. I'm taking the over on the 4.5. All right, and then the final pick, the final prop of today's video. We've reached the end here. It's Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes 3-pointers. So we've been doing pretty well with the 3-point props lately. Let's see if we could keep things going here. We got Harrison Barnes at 1 3-pointer made. I've got him going over that. I think he can make 2 3-pointers. But who cares what I think? Let's see if the numbers agree with what I'm feeling here initially. I'll go all the way down to the very, very bottom. I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but I'll read it anyway. Cleveland, 107 is their open implied total. They are currently live at 107. Now the Kings, they opened at 115. They're currently at 115.5. So their line has actually moved up a half a point. The spread started off at 8. Now it's at 8.5. Sacramento, big time favorites at home in this game. Got to put this one in a red category in terms of blowout risk or blowout potential. Looks like Sacramento is going to put a hurting on the Cleveland Cavaliers, who just haven't been very good at basketball this season. So if that's the case, then maybe our man Barnes can hit a couple of threes and make us some money here. Let's see if it makes any sense. We'll switch lineups.com back to the season view. We will go down and find the Sacramento Kings. Boom. There we go. And we'll look at the 3-point attempts and the 3-point makes for Harrison Barnes this season. Barnes attempting about 4 3-pointers per game on the season, making 1.5, which puts him over 1. So things are looking pretty decent here so far. I'm just going to say pretty decent. I'm not overly in love here with what I'm seeing on the season averages for Harrison Barnes and his threes. But in his last 30 games, he's at 4.4 attempts and 1.5 makes. So the makes have stayed the same. Hopefully they go up here in his 10-game averages. Let's take a look. Harrison Barnes, 3.2 attempts, and his 3-point makes are actually down to 0.6. Oh, that's not good. That's not good for us who are looking to take the over on Harrison Barnes. So finally, we're going to go look at his 5-game log, and maybe things have looked better here in his last 5 games. But so far, my initial hunch, my initial read of Harrison Barnes over 1 3-pointer is not looking fantastic. I got to be truthful, got to be real with you guys. All right. In his last 5 games, he attempted 4 against the Golden State Warriors, his former team. Didn't make a single one. That puts him under 1. 3 attempts, 0 makes. That puts him under. 5 attempts with 1 make. That puts him in a push. 1 attempt, 1 make puts him in a push. And 4 attempts and 2 makes puts him in an over spot. So let me wrap it up, recap it for you guys. In his last 5 games, he's got 1 over, 2 pushes, and 2 unders. So it has not been looking good here for Harrison Barnes. Not a model of consistency whatsoever. We'll look at RotoWire real quick. This will be our last stop and the last thing we talk about. And then we will send you on your way to go lock some picks in for tonight's NBA slate. So Harrison Barnes is up on these various sports books at 1.5 3-pointers made on DraftKings. People are taking the under, meaning they think he's going to shoot or make rather 1 3-pointer or less. FanDuel, they've got him up at 1.5. People are taking the under as well. They think he's going to land on 1 3-pointer made. And finally, PointsBet, they've got him at 1.5, and people are smashing the under there as well. Again, agreeing that 1 3-point make is probably realistic here for Harrison Barnes. So what I would do is lean toward the over. I'd play the over here and hope that he makes 2 instead of just 1. But worst case scenario, he does hit 1 for you, and you're in a push situation. And I'm going to say it again, pushes pay. We don't get paid if we're wrong, however. So I would not take the under on 1. I would lean toward the over and hope for 2 or hope for the push. So that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Let me know if there's any of these picks that are standing out to you. Do any of them make sense based on some of the stats and things that I looked at? Tell me why. Drop a comment down below. Definitely hit the like button if you got any kind of value out of today's video. I appreciate all your continued support, and I hope that you go out and make some money tonight. Until the next one, guys, this is CJ for Out of Bounds DFS. Peace out.